So, we got some interesting stuff I want to talk about. Um, it's mostly just, heck, I'm catching up on news right now, in a way. Because I wanted to talk about this last week, but lots of other things happened. You know, a funeral here, do some other stuff, working a lot, whatever. Um, so, I want to talk about Harry Nowak, or Novak, whichever way it's said, I'm not sure. Um, you know, he was, you know, removed from the earth because of a certain group of individuals, and so England's kind of, you know, England's rioting, um, and then of course we have, you know, there's a lot of things people are just not having it anymore, and I'm a fence kind of a fence sitter, not quite a fence sitter because I mean I've technically picked which side is more important to me, but I still view it from a fence sitting kind of viewpoint. I am actually getting very worried that people who support migration and stuff and all, the anti ice stuff, I don't think they realize how much they're stoking a bonfire. And I'm actually afraid of how drastic, especially if we continue down the road that we are, how drastic things are going to become, because all what people do, if they don't realize that they're supporting something that's, the other half of the population has decided that it's not good, um, you're gonna get this stuff like this. Where, I mean, I got this playing in the background to start off with because, I'm a Christian, or a version of a Christian, and you have, you know, people who are blaspheming God on a regular basis, and not in the way that I I do. I don't believe in church, but I still believe in God. But you know, there's certain things that aren't allowed to be used as a party item like they are here. And you have a Christian, and he just goes ahead and rips down their fake stuff. Um, and as I'm recording this, well, not as I am, but uh, I find out recently, right before this, we had another instance in Belfast with an attempted involuntary surgery on the street. And, well, we got Robert Lowe chiming in enough, and I mean just one word, and I mean that means you actually, does anyone understand, like, human nature? We devolve into, instead of having, talking a lot, when we start getting to the point where we actually are having enough, um, we stop talking. We just start using abrupt one, very short phrase or one word answers because you don't want to deal with something anymore. And actually, what's happening there is that inside that person's mind, anger is actually welling up to the point where it's cutting off your ability to, like, comprehend. And this is what I'm trying to talk about. I'm trying to say, like, if 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 people don't stop pushing for something that they know half of the country doesn't like it's and something that's extreme enough, you're going to get an, I mean, Newton's laws is going to apply. You're going to get an equal and opposite reaction. And so if you want to continue with your extremities on one side, the other side will, I mean, well, here in the U.S., they say that, well, Republicans, they're always meek and they don't. No, I mean, yes, we're meek, but that's because we tried to retain ourselves much, much longer. And that's why I, I identify with that side a little bit more. I am not compulsory. I am not, um, I don't just fly off the handle. I don't do that stuff. I don't have to have instant gratification. So there's a lot of stuff that seems to be a common value on that on one side versus the other side. Excuse me. So um, they're having enough, and and there's a few comments on it. And the first one I scrolled down to, actually, I agree with. This is where honestly the subject kind of came up in my head. To be honest with you, objects in a mirror are closer than they appear. Now, the symbology here is technically it is a crusader army, and or I mean, if anybody watched the movie, this is actually Kingdom of Heaven. It's the it is the Jerusalem army when the Crusaders actually owned part of the Middle East. People need to realize that certain things are getting pushed too far, and maybe it's time to actually ease up and start, you know, working the other way. Starmer is not going to be happy pretty soon. A lot of people who are pushing for, I mean, multiculturalism, and once again, I get to say I need to eat my own words because, gosh darn it, um, it wasn't a Muslim this time; it was a Sikh, and the darn Sikh. This is one group of people that I was like, oh, they haven't been that bad. Well, eat my words. Um, and so after what happened with Harry, I saw a video, and I want to actually watch that with you guys right now of a Mr. Frank Wright, and it's just this is where we are with something, and this is what a lot of people are feeling.
West, across Europe and in Britain, that the whole system is in a form of crisis. If you like, what we used to call normal life has been replaced by a permanent state of emergency in terms of our social incohesion, in terms of demographic change, in terms of the fact that there appear to be no realistic solutions offered, and whoever you vote for, the same mad policies get continued throughout your life. And that's what I've seen the last 30 years. And if it goes on, we're finished.
So what does finish look like?
What does finished look like? Finished looks like an economic collapse. Finished looks like spending all your money on foreign wars when nothing works in the country. Finished looks like you can't get a job for being competent. There's no sanity even in recruitment. We have a competency crisis because for increasingly ideological and insane reasons, employment opportunities, even training opportunities are restricted. There's one news story after another about why, for political reasons, we're doing mad things that bankrupt the country, that basically park people's careers, that exclude talented people of genuine principle from any area of influence whatsoever. And taken collectively, this is the politics and economics of national suicide. So it has to stop. And there's increasingly a sense, not just in Britain, but throughout the West, that something has to change. And I think that's only going to build as we begin to see the devastating consequences of the latest round of reckless warmongering in the Middle East, which we should never have been involved in, but we're all going to have to live with those consequences. And from this summer on, we're going to see how bitter they are. And it's only going to get worse unless we change the system. And there's no real change that's offered by the parties of the forced consensus. That was the liberal establishment after the Second World War, and it doesn't work anymore, and it hasn't produced the utopia it's promised. It's produced a sort of hell on earth from which there seems to be no way out. But there is. There are people of genuine principle and genuine talent in this country. And the reason why so many people despair of that is because I think they've been systematically excluded from positions of power, influence, and professional advantage for ideological reasons that has bankrupted the country. But we have enormous human capital here. We're just not permitted to release it because if you don't have the correct views, you don't get the job, you don't get any promotion. In fact, you might be harassed off social media and find yourself debanked, or at least your career is stymied. So what we need is a realistic economy, some return of human dignity to every area of life. Because, as I said, it hasn't just financially bankrupted us, it's morally bankrupted us too. And we're looking at a state where you're going to live in a borderless international bazaar, a placelessness, if you like, an international nowhere land, where nothing means anything, nowhere seems like home, and where the essential value of human life is replaced with price, such as we see in awful things like surrogacy or 0 hours contracts, or the increasing degradation of, if you what you call a work-life balance. Finally, how many people actually do work? How many people are now dependent on the state, directly or indirectly?
So that's the part where, I mean, everything matters, but like, why are we dependent on the state? Is it because nobody wants to work? Um, I see that as a problem, but I also see that I understand that there are many people who it's not that they don't want to work, but they don't see the point in working anymore. Why don't they want to? Why don't they see there's a point? Because everything's been gotten so expensive that there's not a single person who can make enough money on their own to actually accomplish a life goal or a life dream or anything like that. And that's because at what we've done, we've pretty much made it where it's okay to replace everybody with the lowest paid workers, which could actually be, and this is going to sound pretty horrible, but I don't really care where they come from or what race they are. The dumb you are, the less we have to pay you. So that's what we're gonna do. The companies basically want to import all these people who aren't very imaginative and put them to work to the basic work, and they'll pay them the lowest price, and that's about it. And so the people who were born in the country, they have a higher respect or a higher value of themselves mentally because we're in a great country. I'm American. I'm in a great country. I should be able to afford things because if we're in a great prospering country, I should get a big enough paycheck to be able to prosper, right? And so and that goes for any other western countries that have a pretty decently high GDP and all that other stuff. Because the equation is country has more money. Every person in that country should have more money. I'm not advocating for communism or anything where everything's split equally. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the opportunity to make a decent wage and live a fruitful life should be higher in a country that has a higher GDP. It's common logic, but now what's happening is the system's basically been developed to get the lowest wage worker from, under the guise of multiculturalism, and the rest of the money is retained by the people who own the companies. So,
to the point where those people exceed the ability of the nation to actually make money. This is an economic doom spiral. And so the more that you look at the problem, the more you realize that really we are facing a national emergency. And if you are going to take on the duties of the state, something more than self-interest or printing money for your own political friends, we need to do better than that. We need to take seriously the depth of the crisis that we're in, and we need people of genuine principle and talent to address that. And I think we've found them under Rupert Lowe and in Restore Britain.
And so, do you believe?
So that's the part that I just really wanted to see. If you want to watch the rest of it, it's obviously available on YouTube. You just gotta look up Frank Wright. He's actually been doing a few interviews now. I'm not really. Maybe I'll hit one of those, but not anytime soon. Um, but in my closing right now, it's just we need to figure out how to do better. And it's not immigration. Bring. I mean, come on. There half the country, guys. Half the country has had enough, and I'm not talking about. We're talking about England and the U.S. and it's in France and it's in Germany and it's in Italy. It's in every Western country. Some not so much anymore because I believe that they've already been enveloped by too many of the multiculturalist let-ins. But anything that still has a population that's more than, you know, I don't know, 2/3 are still original population, they are getting mad. And there's even some immigrants, the ones who we say we don't want here, um, that actually, not I shouldn't say that. We don't want the illegals, right? We don't want the undocumented ones. And same with England and stuff. Although they are documented, but they just got like 5 year visas. Just I mean, the incident in Belfast, the guy got a 5 year visa. He's there documented, but he's now trying to cut off or involuntary surgery on the street. um, Uh, Europe's a little bit different situation because they've technically taken the time, and actually, understandably, why the Brits. I mean, I if you want to see Frankenstein in the movie in reality with pitchforks and fire and people in the streets, it's gonna maybe come to that one of these days, because the government's actually documented all these people but aren't doing anything about it because you know, they a lot of people are referring to it as a two-tier policing system at this point. So for me, it's for the U.S. It's a little bit different because we're more against the people who are non-documented immigrants. And the funny part about it is that a lot of the documented immigrants of Hispanic descent that well, we're so anti-Hispanic. Um, a lot of them are actually saying we want them out too because it's the ones who are here legally, for the most part, took the time to integrate and do the stuff that you're supposed to do as a person who immigrates to a country. But anyway, with visas and are undocumented should probably not be here. Um, but things are about to kind of overflow a little bit. Um, yeah, let's not talk about that, right? There's so much stuff going on. Here's what's going on in Belfast after the what happened in Belfast. People, the people are burning the houses. If you read it, it's protester torch asylum seeking housing. Multiple buildings set on fire. People demand the deportation of all illegal immigrants and foreign criminals now. That's just a taste. Um, they burned the buildings. They didn't drag anyone out of it that I heard of yet. So we need to start being careful. We need to start not. It's time for the politicians and the people who support this multiculturalism stuff. It's time for you guys to back down a little bit. It's time for um, what I would call a consolidation. get the ones out that are really bad and you know it. Maybe you can save a few who are really good and keep them in the country. But you don't get the. You guys need to stop protecting the bad ones. So that's what I've got for today. You guys have a good one.